Let's talk about WebGoat's A7 authentication bypasses. This module tells a story about a user who managed to find an authentication bypass for PayPal. In this bypass, the user attempted to log in from an unrecognized computer. So to verify his identity, PayPal had him answering 2 security questions. Now usually, when a website uses security questions, the backend will accept the request and check for 2 specific keys. Then it will check the values of those keys against your account. This is pretty normal and probably makes sense, but what happens when the developer in the backend implemented this functionality poorly? This WebGoat question works really similarly to the story I just referenced. What the backend code should do is check for 2 specific keys and then grab the values of those 2 specific keys, and then check those values against your account. The front end of this problem sends a request with 2 parameters called setQuestion0 and setQuestion1. So you might think that the backend would check for 2 parameters called setQuestion0 and setQuestion1. But the reason that this exploit is possible is because it doesn't check for these 2 keys. It checks for any key that contains the word setQuestion, puts them all into a hash map, and then it checks that there is exactly 2 setQuestion keys in that hash map. If this is true, then it compares setQuestion0 to the value set in your account and setQuestion1 to the value set in your account. If either of them don't match, it sets the value of authenticated to false. But the thing you have to note about this is that that value is true until one of these don't match. However, since it only checks that it has 2 parameters that contain the word setQuestion, you could put something like setQuestionA or setQuestionB, and it won't check that against setQuestion0 and 1. Therefore, it will satisfy all the needs of this function and return true for being authenticated. Seems like a pretty major oversight, right? Well, that's because it is, and it can be easily prevented by you and your own programs. You can prevent it by having your program check for, say, 2 specific parameters, instead of parameters containing a value. Now, in practice, this is actually pretty quick and simple. Go to section 2 of A7 authentication bypasses, turn on intercept in Burp Suite, and then go back to the WebGoat page, scroll down, and put in any value for both the questions below. Submit it, and when you go back to Burp Suite, you'll see your request with the parameters setQuestion0 and setQuestion1. Remember, the backend is checking for these 2 specific questions, so if we change the 0 to say an A and the 1 to a B, this will satisfy all the checks we previously talked about. Forward the request and boom! You've exploited a pretty realistic authentication bypass. Now again, in the real world, this is exactly as easy to do as it was in WebGoat. So please, pay attention to your authentication checks, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.